Hello boys and girls, let's dive into Unit 11, Ratios and Rates, and before we kick things off, let's get some groundwork laid down. First of all, when we're talking about ratios, ratios are simply a comparison between two amounts, and we usually express that comparison as a fraction. Also, when we look at these ratios, we've got ones that are part to part, such as if I were to say how many boys there are to girls and how many girls there are to boys, that's part to part. But if I were to say how many boys are there out of the total number of students in the class, that would be different. That would be a part to whole, and we can also flip that around. Let's look at some sample problems and work on them together. Let's go.
Boys and girls, let's take a look at problem number 1. It says Pedro has a bag of marbles with 5 red and 15 blue marbles. Diagram and list the following ratios. Well, let's draw our bag of marbles. Our bag of marbles would have 5 red, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red, and then it would have 15 blue marbles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and let's make it a big green bag, and we've got our bag of marbles right there. Let's put a string around it. There we go. Okay, so there we have it. There's a diagram. We can see that we have 5 marbles that are red and 15 that are blue. And if we want to write this as a ratio, which just shows a comparison between these two numbers, we could simply say we have 5 red to 15 blue. Okay, and this just is a comparison between how many red and how many blue marbles we have. It's also a fraction, but we could write it like this. We could write it using a colon, which would be 5 to 15. And we could even write it just out as a phrase, 5 to 15. These are all different ones. I like fractions because when we have a ratio set up as fractions, we can do a lot more mathematical things with it easier. Okay. For example, first thing I want to do is I want to simplify this. I can simplify. I can tell that 5 will go into 5 one time, 5 will go into 15 3 times. So this is really equal to a 1 to 3 ratio. But let's say we want to compare not just red to blue marbles, okay, because that is a part to part. The red marbles is part of the whole, and the blue marbles is also part of the whole. So we have the red, and then we have the blue. Let's say we want to compare the number of red to the entire bag of marbles, which altogether, if there's 5 and 15, that's 20 marbles in all. And we can also simplify that. This is called a part to whole ratio. Up here, this was a part to part. Okay, and this part to part we could also reduce. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 24 times. This would be a 1 red marble for every 4 marbles in the bag, or all together. Okay, and if we can compare red to all, we can also compare blue. We have 15 blue to 20 marbles in all. This again is a part to whole. It is a part to whole ratio. And we can reduce this. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 5 goes into 20 4 times. I'm just looking for a common factor and factoring it out. So this would be equal to 3, there's 3 blue marbles for every 4 marbles overall. Okay, and there we have our ratios and our diagram.
Well, boys and girls, that's one problem. Let's try another.
Boys and girls, let's take a look at number 2. We have Mr. Lee's gym class has 14 football players and 8 soccer players. Diagram and list the following ratios. I did the diagram in advance. I kept it real simple. I could have made 14 footballs and 8 soccer balls. That would have been painstakingly long, but I think you get the idea with the F's representing each football player and the S's representing each of the soccer players. So there's our diagram. Let's take a look at, let's create some ratios here. First of all, we can just do a part-to-part ratio. We can say that we have 14 football players for every 8 soccer players. We can simplify this to 7 over 4, which would look like we're taking just factoring a 2 out of both. We're saying, okay, we got 7 football players to 8 soccer players. That's our most basic form of this ratio. We can also do a part to whole. We could say I have 14 football players out of the entire class of athletes. And how many athletes? If I have 14 and 8, that would be 22. Okay, so 14 out of all 22 athletes. And we can simplify that. We can factor a 2 out of 14 7 times and 2 out of 11, 2 out of 22 11 times. So we would get a 7 to 11 ratio. And once again, remember, we can write this ratio in a fraction form. We can also write it that way, or we can write it out as using a colon, or write it out as a phrase. Okay, any of these forms are fine. And this here, we would call this is a part to whole ratio, while this is a part to part, because we're just comparing the 2 parts of the entire class, where here we're comparing the number of football players to the entire class. And if we can compare football players to the entire class, we could also compare soccer players. There's 8 soccer players to 22 athletes overall in Mr. Lee's gym class. So, and that is also, we can simplify that as well. 2 would go into 8 4 times, and 2 would go into 22 11 times. So we would have a 4 to 11 ratio. And we can write that out using a colon, 4 to 11, or as a phrase. I think you're getting the idea. Boys and girls, I hope that problem was interesting. We have a few more. Boys and girls, let's look at 3. Here we have 7 taco orders were taken to 14 burrito orders. We need to diagram and list the following ratio. We already see that we have a diagram here that shows our total order. We have 7 tacos here, and we have 14 burritos over here. So we would write this out as a 7 tacos to 14 burritos. Okay. This can be reduced to a 1 to 2 ratio, and this is a part to part ratio. We're taking a look at the 2 parts of this entire group, and we're comparing the 2 parts. There's 7 tacos to 14 burritos, or 1 for every 2 burritos. And we can also compare burritos to the entire order, which would be 21 orders in all. And we can reduce this as well. 7 goes into 14 2 times, 7 goes into 21 3 times, and just factoring out a 7, and we get a 2-to-3 ratio for burritos out of the complete or total order. And this is a part to whole ratio. I'm comparing part of the group to the entire group. And we can do one more part to whole ratio, which would be 7 tacos out of 21 orders in all. And this will reduce. 7 goes into 7 1 time, 7 goes into 21 3 times. It is a 1-to-3 part to whole ratio. And we know that we can write these ratios in 3 different forms.
Okay, boys and girls, I hope that problem was fun. Let's try another.
Boys and girls, I don't know what overcame me, but as you can see, I got a little artistic with this one. Please excuse my art, but here we have the Phone Shack sold 9 iPhones in problem number 4 and 6 Droids. And we need to diagram and list the ratios. We have the wonderful diagram over here. Here I have 9 apples representing the iPhones. I know they look a little more like cherries, and these are my 6 Droid phones. They're the little droid symbols, or it's meant to be at least. Okay, so let's start with our ratios. We have 9 iPhones. You'd express it like that, to 6 Droids. Okay, and when first of all, this is a part to part ratio, and we can simplify it by factoring a 3 out of both, and 3 goes into 9 3 times, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. So this would be a 3-to-2 ratio, 3 iPhones to every 2 Droids that were sold at the Phone Shack. We can also have a part to whole, okay, which altogether there were 9 iPhones and 6 Droid phones, so we can see there's a total. 9 plus 6 is equal to 15, and this would be the whole group, or all the cell phones. So there's 15 cell phones in all, and this is a part to whole ratio, and this can be simplified by factoring a 3 out of both the 9 and the 15, and we would get 3 iPhones are sold out of every 5 total phones. And we can also take a look at Droids, compare the number of Droid phones to the total number of cell phones, which is a 6-to-15 ratio, and we can reduce this down to 2 out of every 5 phones sold at the Phone Shack were Droids. And this is a part to whole, because I'm comparing one part of my total group of phones sold to the entire group. You guys should be pros at the basics of ratios.
Well, boys and girls, that's all I have for you today. I hope you learned a lot about ratios and rates. And keep in mind, when we're talking about ratios, it's simply a comparison of 2 different amounts of things, whether it be gumdrops and gumballs or gummy bears and gummy worms. Ratios and rates, we use them all the time. Bye-bye.